Hey everybody, today I'm going to deconstruct the process of a negotiation so that you can see the behind the scenes of how a win-win deal is constructed. The first question we have to ask ourselves is why? Why are we in this transaction and negotiating in the first place? Whether I'm representing the buyer or the seller, it's important that we factor all of their concerns into the equation and that they have my expertise in negotiating and crafting the best strategy for us. This is going to save them time, money, and hassle. We want to make the process easier. And sometimes people get afraid of, oh, negotiation is a big scary thing. It doesn't have to be. That's where we come in and make it easier, and hopefully we craft a win-win strategy for everyone. The next question that we ask ourselves is, what is the result that we want to achieve? So a lot of times this means it's a win-win deal for everyone, but we want to get the most of what we want and also have a deal. But sometimes no deal is better than a bad deal. The third thing that we're going to take a look at is how are we going to get there? So I'll walk you through the steps and some tricks that we use in our negotiating strategies so that you can get a behind the scenes look of how it happens. And then the fourth thing is, what is the result we're looking for? And that would be a win-win deal for everybody. So let's get right into it. The first thing that we're going to look at and when you're negotiating and what our strategies are is we need to build rapport. So I look at the other party. In this example, say I'm representing the seller, I'm the listing agent, and a buyer's agent brings an offer. But there are a lot of steps that happen before that buyer's agent brings me the offer. And so that's where we want to build rapport. Now, some of the agents I know from the area, but if it's an agent that I haven't worked with before, it starts with just the first showing, like finding out what are they looking for, what is their client interested in, and building rapport. And I think sometimes people think that if you're a nice person, you're weak. But actually, being a nice person can result in being a win-win situation. So the second thing is we ask clarifying questions to try to figure out what is the motivation of their party. So some questions we might ask are, we want to understand what is important to the other side. We want to know, well, why is your client so interested in that particular closing date? We want to know, are they ready to move? How about, here's a good one, how many houses have they looked at? This would tell us, if they've only looked at the first house and now they're putting in an offer, then they're probably motivated or they're acting from emotion, and maybe this isn't the best house for them. Or here's a good one, what if we want to ask them, have they submitted any offers on other properties? That might tell me that, oh, well, they've been in 2 different multiple offer situations, so now maybe they've learned and this time they're ready to act. Or if I ask that same question and they say that, no, they haven't put in any offers, well, then maybe that tells me that they haven't been through the process yet, and they have to figure out how it works going back and forth and negotiating. So by asking these kinds of questions, we're trying to ascertain what is the motivation on the other side. And we treat the other side, as I said, I call them a partner, a negotiating partner, and not an opponent, because that creates an adversarial experience, and we want to have a win-win deal. So my negotiating partner is how we're going to work together to get this deal done. And most times in a real estate transaction, I'm not directly negotiating with the buyer or the seller. We have that the intermediary, the other agent who's representing the buyer. In my case, I'm representing the seller, and we work together to craft a deal. Then the next thing, we want to understand all the parties in the transaction who are decision makers. How awful would it be to have a first-time buyer couple, they come in, they love the unit, and then they find out that a parent who happens to be giving them the down payment says, no, that's not the best fit for you. Well, that's disappointing. So we want to know ahead of time, like, who is involved in the negotiation and the decision making. And perhaps if we find out early on in the negotiation that the parents who are influencing the decision, if they haven't seen the unit, maybe we would suggest a second showing. Well, why don't you bring back mom and dad so that they can weigh in before they could potentially blow up the deal because they don't like something. So we want to know who is involved in making that decision. Okay, number 4, and this is a big one. We want to show empathy. Now, for those of you who know me, you know that I am an empathetic person. That is part of my personality, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have that in your personality to show empathy for the other side. And again, it could be considered weak, but the purpose of showing empathy is that it's showing that you care about the other person and what their concerns and constraints might be. And don't be confused. Showing empathy doesn't necessarily mean you agree with their position, but you can show respect and you can understand it. Because if you understand where they're coming from, it can help you to maybe give them something that it's not such a concession on your end, but if it's going to smooth the deal, it's just information, because you're still in the information gathering stage about how we're going to make this happen. Okay, number 5, we want to be flexible on the structure by saying something to the effect of, I know where we need to end up. I'm flexible how we get there. So that is one way we can try to bridge any misunderstandings and understand where they're coming from, and also showing that you have an idea of the result and what you need to do to get there. Okay, number 6, we want to create as many options as we can so that we're not going down a rabbit hole over one item. Now, if you're in the market of buying a house, as you know, there are lots of different things that we need to work on, but sometimes it's not just about the price. So some of the things in the negotiation could be, how much earnest money are you going to be putting down into the deal? Is it a cash deal or finance deal? Closing date. Now that can be a big one depending on the seller and the buyer and what they need to do. Sometimes they would be willing to take less money if they could have a flexible closing date. So those are things that we need to find out, and it'll help us when we're crafting our strategy. Number 7, give the partner a way to save face. It's very possible that the agent, my partner on the other part of the transaction, agrees with our position or understands how the business works and that this is selling a product and trying to take the emotion out of it. But for example, what happens if that agent, who's my partner negotiating this deal, maybe they don't deliver our presentation the way that we had wanted them to? Maybe it's a person on the other, the partner on the other side who is not understanding our position and can't convey that to the buyer. Or maybe the buyer's agent that I'm working with does understand all those things, but is having trouble with the buyer that they're working with on understanding and coming up, and we get into a stalemate. So we want to maybe reword how the offer is, or change something that's not substantial in our offer so that the buyer can just accept it. And that way then the buyer's agent isn't ramroding down their own position, but can also give us as much as we want in that situation. Number 8, and finally, this is about optics. So optics meaning, how does the deal look? Perhaps it's a nice, everyone has a little bit of what they need in the deal, and we would consider it a win-win. But if the optics of the deal don't appear where somebody can accept it, let's go back to that example of how we had the first-time buyers who are buying a house, but the parents are giving them the down payment. Well, perhaps that we've negotiated a great price, but the parents have something that they're worried about. Maybe it's the location, or it's not close enough to their house. Okay, so perhaps we can change the optics and say, yeah, but we've got this price and there was another offer and they're going to accept our offer. So by rephrasing it, maybe the parents can feel as part of the deal and can help them to accept that deal because it is in the best interest of the client. So this is a way to kind of look behind the scenes of how we are negotiating and some of the things that we take into account. It's not always about haggling over one single price. There's a lot of strategy that goes behind it, and that starts with asking questions, understanding their motivation, and showing empathy. And the end result would be a successful deal for everybody. I hope you found this a bit interesting to hear how deals get done behind the scenes. And if you'd like some help with negotiating, either you're buying or selling, I'd love to help you and represent you. Let's meet for a home and lifestyle consultation. We're getting ready for the 2021 season is here, and I'm ready to help you. Thanks for watching. Do you want more invaluable tips like these? Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Weekly we share real estate market activity, things about your home everything. I'd love to connect with you.